Hey everyone, my name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. Before I get in today's episode, I want to say thank you to Charlie. Charlie reached out to me, someone that listens to the show. So Charlie, if you're listening, thank you for reaching out, answering a question that I had about some supplements. I really appreciate it. I know, listening to a podcast, I listen to several, and you maybe think of, like a big production studio and a team of people putting these together. That's not me. And that's actually not most podcasters. Most podcasters are in a studio in their basement with a microphone, and they're talking to a microphone by themselves. And I don't consider myself a lonely person. I do have friends, but when I'm doing my podcast, I am all by myself unless I'm having an interview. And it is so refreshing to have somebody reach out and comment. And so Charlie, thank you. I really appreciate that. So let's get into this show, this episode. I get really excited to talk about health and fitness. It's something that's very important to me. And I get even more excited when the advice that the experts are giving me is one, something that we probably already all knew. Two, it's pretty easy to do. And three, is enjoyable. Like when you think about something like cold plunges, which is not what we're talking about today, like that's not a totally enjoyable experience. Now, there's a lot of health benefits to it. There's a lot of research that's saying this is something we probably should incorporate if you want to live a healthy life, but it's not jumping into cold water is probably never enjoyable. It's like getting out is the benefit. It's kind of like running. Running is almost always hard. And they say running is just like hitting yourself in the hammer, hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. It feels so good to stop. But this recommendation is easy. It's enjoyable. And I'm going to encourage you to incorporate this into your life. And that is something as simple as sun exposure. I was listening to another podcast, and it led me to the study, and they started talking about getting sun exposure and the benefits of that. And I have talked about in the past the benefits of morning sunlight in your eyes. And this is not that, or I will briefly cover that. This is actually getting sun on your skin. So to explain what's going on and what this isn't, when you think about sun exposure, most of us will think vitamin D, and we'll talk about that, but it's not just that. So when you go outside, there's a giant ball of fire that's shooting radiation through the millions and millions of miles of air, and it's hitting our skin. There's several types, UVA, UVB, UVC. UVC gets filtered out mostly by our atmosphere, so we're left with A and B, and they both do different things to our bodies. And for a very long time, that there's the risk of skin cancer, and the talk about skin cancer and putting sunscreen on, being completely covered head to toe, that has taken center stage in the health talks about sun exposure. And what they've found is that while, nobody wants to get skin cancer, that completely avoiding sun exposure is not healthy. And that the data is pretty solid on that. So I'm going to hopefully break this down, because there's a lot of varying opinions. And anytime you're talking about health, or diet, there's people on both ends of the spectrum. And one thing that's important to realize is that when you are hearing from an expert, it's helpful to know where the expert is coming from. For instance, if you talk to a dermatologist about sun exposure, their main bias is going to be towards avoiding skin cancer, because they are skin doctors. And they might actually not see the research or the benefits of the other things that can happen. So realize that a lot of times when you get advice, it might be from someone with a very specific view on life and a bias because they're experiencing things. Like obviously a dermatologist is going to see way more skin cancer than a cardiologist, because they're not looking at skin cancer. And so they might have different opinions on what's important. So let's talk about vitamin D. When we think about sun exposure, we think about vitamin D. Now, one of the interesting things in calling it vitamin D is a little bit, not that it's not correct, but it's actually more of a hormone than like a vitamin, like you would take like vitamin C eating oranges. And one of the cool thing is it's one of the only vitamins or hormones that we can synthesize from the sun, which is really cool because it means that we are solar powered, which is kind of cool. Like we are acquiring our energy from a giant ball of fire millions of miles away. And I think that's pretty cool. And the way it works is we have these precursors to vitamin D in our body. And basically when the sun hits our skin, it cooks the chemicals into, it's like baking a cake. You can have your eggs, flour, and all that. We have all that stuff, but it's not a cake until you heat it up. And that's kind of, a layman's version of how we get vitamin D. The sun, the photons hit our skin. That process causes the precursors of this vitamin D to come together and then give us all the benefits of vitamin D. Now, we learned that vitamin D was really important when we switched from being an agricultural community to a city living, and where people just weren't outside. They spent all days in factories. They were getting things like rickets. Well, they realized that you can consume vitamin D and actually eat your vitamin D and get it into your system. And that was one of the ways to counteract the lack of sun exposure. Now, if I'm from Michigan, right now it's a beautiful day. Actually, it's raining today, but it's been a beautiful summer. It's been hot. We've been outside. Getting enough vitamin D during the summer is not a big deal. But come January, it gets dark at like 5 p.m., which is very depressing, both physically and mentally depressing. Like it literally, the sun going away causes a thing called seasonal affective disorder, and it can be really bad. But it's just really hard to go get the sun exposure. And so they've done a lot of studies, and a lot of them focused on vitamin D, which does a lot of things for, it's a multi-use hormone or vitamin, and it is important. And getting sun exposure is one way to do it. But again, you can supplement. But what they found is that people with higher levels of vitamin D had across the board a decreased mortality in all these different kinds of things. Decrease in blood pressure, lower incidence of diabetes, all these different things. But what they realized was that the people having vitamin D, while that does have certain benefits, health benefits, that was correlative to having more sun exposure. Meaning it wasn't just the vitamin D, because they had people who had appropriate levels of vitamin D in their blood system, but because they weren't getting any sun exposure, they also had other problems. And so in the past, there was like, hey, if you have vitamin D, you get rid of all these things. Well, it's not that it was the vitamin D. It was the fact that they were getting it from the sun. And that's a cursor that's showing us that you're getting enough sun exposure. So there are other benefits outside of just getting vitamin D to the sun exposure that are really important. So how much sun is too much sun or not enough? Or, should we put sunscreen on? If you've been to the beach anytime in the last, couple years, you'll see people who have taken, the adage that I'm going to get zero sun exposure, and they are wearing, a long sleeve shirt. They are wearing a hat with a neck gaiter, and they've got the little bit of skin exposed. They've got so much sunscreen on. It's white. You can actually see the sunscreen. And what modern medicine is saying is that could be dangerous as far as not getting the appropriate amount. So if you work in an office and anytime you go out, you're completely covered, you are missing out on huge benefits of actually getting the sun to hit your body. But there is a fine line between, the risk of skin cancer and then all the other risks. So do we want skin cancer? No, we don't want skin cancer. But if you go to the World Health Organization and you ask the question, what is the global death and illness from sun problems? It's less than like 0.1%. It's a very small percentage of what people are dying from in the entire world. But we do know it's a thing. So what are we worried about with cancer? Well, there's 3 types of cancers, basal cell, squamous cell, and then melanoma. The first two usually aren't like deadly. They're not good. You don't want them. But it's when you see somebody and they come in, they got a kind of cut on their head. Hey, what happened? I had to get a cancer cut off. That's a very low risk of death type of cancer. And it's very fixable by literally just removing it. Now, melanoma is deadly and it does kill people. And I don't want to reduce what melanoma is dangerous. But for the most part, melanoma is caused by getting burned, and it probably getting burned 10, 20, 30 years ago as a kid. And so when we were thinking about sun exposure, we need to prevent burning. We do not want our skin to get burned. When you get burned, you increase your chances of getting melanoma, the dangerous type of cancer. So if you think you're going to be in a situation where you get burned, put sunscreen on, wear long sleeves, put a hat on. We don't want to get burned. And and it's pretty common sense, which is why I kind of like the study, is if you're a fair person, if you're a redhead from Ireland, put some sunscreen on. We know, the people with red hair that are a pale skin have they don't tan, they just get red. And you have to do a lot more. And you don't need a lot of sun exposure to get the benefits because you've got no melanin blocking out the UVA or UVB. But if you're they call you the average person with an average skin tone, you probably need, 10 minutes of good exposure throughout the day. Or that would be with no sunscreen on, going out, getting 10 minutes of full sun exposure with 40% of your body, uncovered. That's okay. Now, you can do it differently. Like I have a bald head and I don't want my head to burn. So I put sunscreen on my head every day. But if I'm going to go work out in the yard for 30 minutes and it's, remotely cloudy, I don't put sunscreen on my arms. Don't put it on my neck or my legs. I'm allowing myself to get that exposure. And that's enough. 10, 15 minutes a day is enough. Now, if you're darker like my wife's from South America, she's Latin, she's got darker skin. She might need on the higher end towards that 10, 15, 20 minutes. If you're my African-American friends and you have really black, dark skin, you might need even more than that. And the idea that, no sun exposure is good is false. The sun is good for us. It does all kinds of things. It gives us good feelings. There's a reason why some people get addicted to going to tanning beds because it provides dopamine. It provides these feel-good feelings. Sun exposure can lower your blood pressure. It can do all these things that are beneficial. And we live in a world where no more than any other time in the world where, this would not be a conversation that we needed to have 100 years ago. People were outside. They're not having, because everything was outside. Well, now you can go from inside your office or your house, get in your car, go to the office, or even now you never leave your home at all. For days on end because you work in your home. And if it's cold out, you really don't go outside and get any skin exposure. So it can happen. What I'm saying from what I've read, and again, I'm not a doctor. I do like to read studies. I like to listen to experts talk about this, is to go outside. If you're going to be outside all day long, put SPF 15, SPF 30. Eventually you're going to get that. I'm not saying if you go to the beach, put sunscreen on. Wear a hat. But if you're going outside for 30 minutes, you can do a little bit of walk around your block. Get the sun exposure. Like it will literally extend your life. It's that good. And we need to do that. We know in the morning, 5 to 10 minutes of the sun, early morning rays that hit your eyes, wake you up. It allows you to start the melanoma cycle, not melanoma, melatonin, cycle later in the day to make you sleepy 16 hours later. Like this stuff is awesome. And what's cool is we knew this as human beings, right? We knew that going to the beach, spending time in the sun, when you get back, you feel better. Now science is proving that you should go out and get sun exposure. So go outside, play with your kids. Don't stress out about young kids. We know that we don't want to get them burned. So don't, weigh those benefits. We have UV index. You can look on your phone now. If the UV index is high, 5, 6, 7, 8 up there, wear sunscreen. If it's 2 or 3, maybe skip it. Get exposure to the sun. It'll make you healthier, happier, and better person. And it's easy and it's enjoyable. It's like sleep. So you're telling me that if I sleep 8 hours a day, I go outside for 30 minutes, with my arms uncovered, my head uncovered and wearing shorts, that I can live a longer, healthier life? I'm in. Sign me up. If I could just get them to tell me that Oreos were healthy, life would be good. So get outside and do that. If you need help in your relationship, I am here to ask for your help in putting together a program. It's a beta program where I'm helping men connect with their families. It's going to be a 2-week program. There is a form at the end of my show notes, so sign up there. And I would love to talk with you, see if I can help you, because I think connecting with our family, there's nothing more important. And in today's day and age, it's easy to be online, to be disconnected, to go to work, to feel like a robot, to come home, to be tired and have no connection. I want to help you make that connection. So give me a call or give me an email, and we'll be in touch. I am looking forward to talking with you. And that's it for this show. So thank you so much. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast, and I will talk to you later. Bye.